Hi there, guys. Hi. Hi. Let me just check for 1 second whether, yes, my sound is off, so I can talk to you without getting any interruptions and things. I'm going to do another of these. This is a charcoal disc, like, that you get for burning church incense type incense. I have a bag over here, and it says Encens Jérusalem, like so. Will that focus? I don't know. There you go. Anyway, basically resins, and I had some yesterday, and it was nice. And because I'm a bit pooped and a bit in the way of myself, and a bit things have been going on, I want to do the tag, which is in front of me, and use it to sort of, go around the houses with these subjects, and hopefully also entertain all of us, myself included. I wonder, oops, yes, you can actually see that sparkling. Can you see? Oh yes. Poof, 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 like a little locomotive. I'm sticking this in my bowl that also has mugwort at the bottom, so it'll sit on top of the mugwort and just generally give a bit of a charcoaly fume at the moment. And in a minute, I will, when it's done sparking, I will put some of this nice Jerusalem incense mixture. It's basically like a church incense on top of that, which is something I tend to use on and off, I don't know, a few times a year. It's nice. It smells nice, and there may still be some of those grains of resin actually in the bowl down there, in between the mugwort. So, very confused. I am, I've been, doing my thing here, and had a nice weekend. Today's Monday, the 25th of November. It's very sunny, as you can see. We have nice weather out here. It's supposed to, go off and rain a bit more later this week, but today at least it will be a fairly nice day again. I got me a mug of tea, and maybe that's just one way of, going about this, really. I've got me a really large chunk of some type of a matrix. Let me put this in the sun. Is that possible? It won't focus, of course, as long as I'm in here. Oh yes, now you can see, get a bit more focus, maybe. This is actually a lot of little garnet crystals in a matrix of some sort. I don't know what the matrix is. It's really heavy. Must be careful not to drop it on top of my tea mug here. And there's some type of cat hair or what have you. I actually picked out one of the little garnet crystals that I won't be able to show you, like this. I love garnet. Garnet is the only, if I had to go to a desert island with only one rock, it would probably be one of these, Maybe this one or the other one, the polished one that I've shown you a few times. Maybe that's actually, there's a see, there's a red knob right there. That's all those red spots. Those are garnet crystals, and they have like this sort of a simplified football shape with angles going like that. So planes. I'm using, sort of sitting with the crystal also to help me get my mojo back on, because I'm going to be alone for a part of the week at least, and I need me some mojo. I need to be, I need me some fun. I need to be able to look myself in the eye and go, okay, so you did a thing and then you go and do another thing, okay? I cannot just leave it the way it is, really. And the way it is basically that I've basically because I've had this dream about the old work situation, I had a bit of a revisit of what that was really like. And as some of you may know, I have worked for an incense company. I used to work for an incense company for a total of 11 years as a sales representative and a general part of that, And a lot can be said about that in all sorts of ways, good and bad, because people, there's always things, and it wasn't ideal for a lot of us. But I am at this point a bit of I tend to get shocked, I suppose, at how hard things have been for me, especially pre-soul retrieval, because that's really basically on my mind at this point. I just, I sucked at connecting to people. And I can be ashamed of that, or feel bad, or tell myself that it's something that should have been different. But it wasn't. It was the way it was. What can you do? So I find that a bit hard to accept. I find it hard to accept the way things felt for me also. I know that it wasn't easy for my colleagues and my people around me either. And that bothers me, yes. But at this point, I've posed this question to myself before. Why was I born with soul loss in the manner that I was? Why was I incapable of connecting in this way? It's tricky and it's weird, and it's even weirder that I actually kind of found a way out of it. I found a way to this core of myself that manages to connect with people. I don't know. It's my path, and it's been such an insane road, and it used to be very lonely. I used to feel left out always. I was angry, I was upset, I was in pain all the time. And I'm wondering now, what with having, I'm starting to integrate. Of course, I should be really, over the moon about that, basically, because as time goes by and as I do my things the way I do them, I'm becoming a lot stronger. And I wonder if I had been born normally, with a normal set of perceptions and all the rest of it, whether one of two options, right? Either I wouldn't have made it, or maybe I would have made it. But it's pointless to ask that type of question. It's the mind, really. My mind asks questions that make really no sense. I'm going to push this candle out of the way and then just go slightly backwards, because then I feel like I'm looking at the camera a bit more. And there's this really big contrast with the sun like that, and shades and bits and bobs. Black and white, guys. Black and white. Can't help it. I was a bit hung up earlier this morning about all the emotions and the things that, it felt just like being blamed for something that I couldn't help, which was a constant trigger. What I realized was that I would never have gotten here to this point, to the point of where I've got all these types of knowledge and all these changes inside me. I would never have gotten there without that phase, without passing through there first. Makes total sense. I learned to think about emotions and about vibrations and about things not being necessarily always the way they seem, in all sorts of ways. All that I really learned to apply over there. So time wasn't lost. It was time well spent, basically. So I'm going to leave it this bit. I'm going to leave that. It was just very much on my mind this morning. And I was basically in pain because of the lack of understanding between all of us. And it's because I want to promote understanding that I am doing the channel. I'm telling myself this also, as I tend to do. So, here's to the channel, to you, because without you, I wouldn't have a channel. Whether you ever post a comment, whether you ever, engage with any of this, at least you're listening and some of you are making yourselves available for me and for us to have this channel, which is a thing of itself. It's like publishing a book and then the book goes out and gets read by people, which is something you can't really follow or see happen. By the way, we are going to Amsterdam, yes, after Christmas, some couple of days after Christmas we will be going. And because I have found a museum in the middle of Amsterdam, close to my favorite shops, of Hermeticism. Yes, we've got that in Amsterdam. I kind of felt that it should be there because of the things, I studied in Amsterdam when I was 18, 20 years old. And that's where I met my husband. And it's a long time ago. But I also, before I met my husband even, I went to a kind of a group meeting of the Rosicrucians one time, an open evening or something where they had a lecture of some sort. And it's one of those things where I have absolutely no memory of whatever it was that was being said, because relevance to me personally, none found anyway. But I really enjoyed being there. And even though it was, very urban and nobody really, but it's the old city. You're in this, I remember being in this kind of a basement of some sort of one of those really old 18th century or earlier houses. And it wasn't very new agey at all. It was very mystical, and they were going on about, I've no clue. I've no memory. But it's a very nice memory considering that I don't remember anything that was being said or any of it, So I was kind of looking for that because it's a kind of vibration, which hence also the, Jerusalem incense. I'm just going to go do a ramble here. The tag will probably be in the middle of the ramble somewhere when I've got the things off my chest, So here goes some of this yellow. Can I show that to you? No, I can't. Maybe like this. See? There's little yellow transparent resiny bits. I'm going to shove this over to the side over there, otherwise we'll be completely fogged out. It's pretty though. The smoke is curling and the sun is shining through the smoke like that. It's smoking like no tomorrow. So that was a really fun memory. Right, sort of next, not completely next door, but in the same kind of a street, right, close by, is my candle and incense shop, where I did not buy this bag, but they sell a lot of this type of stuff. They also sell all sorts of perfume oils and candles, and they make their own candles and stuff like that. So that's really cool. And I used to visit all that stuff when I was a student, and I really always enjoyed this kind of a mystical. I'm a mystic. Yeah. So the tag also really, because I will come back to this now, I think, really appeals to me because it's a way of talking about all those things that we kind of share. I suppose that's why I'm doing this also, is because I'm interested in the sharing of the questions much more than in getting any answers to them ever. It's just, that's not why you do a tag, right? You just do the tag to share your side of, which is great fun. So thank you for the tag. I should, of course, put a link in the description to where I found the tag at first, and then from there on out you can, look it all up. I got this from the 3 Fat Readers, where they did a 3 people session, each of them giving their take on each of those questions. So that was an extensive session right there. So this will be slightly shorter and slightly, slanted to one particular dimension, which is my dimension of things. Okay. So I have a list here of the little, questions that are part of the tag. And as I talk, it will get foggier, even though the door is open over there. And I've already got this huge bank of sun rays coming through like that, through the fog. So that was just 4 or 5 of those bits of resin, okay? So if you can't see me anymore, but you can still hear me talking, you know what's happened. Question number 1. Aliens. And off I go into American land. I live in Holland, in the Netherlands, as some of you know. And even though I talk in the English, I'm not an American, I'm not an English native speaker at all. I studied English, which is why I do this, this way. But I am flung into America because although there are actually, because of this tag, I looked it up, there's actually a UFO website reporter point where you can go to and report if you've got footage or some type of description of an unidentified flying skylight object of some sort. I don't think we've got in this country as much of an affection, if I can call it that, and or a relationship with Pleiadians, Arcturians, the Grey, and all that, except for people in the very new agey part of society. Maybe if I sit like this, you can see me a bit better. Who feel attracted to, especially, for example, they're into light language and that type of exchange. They're into vibrations. They're saying that they are connected to Arcturians. In particular, I've encountered people who are into that type of thing. Sometimes, gosh, I'm already 17 minutes in and I haven't even started on my tag yet. I've started on the tag, okay? I will put that in the description as well, that I just had to get started for at first. I have never myself encountered any alien intelligence as such. Everybody around me says we are not alone in the universe because of logic, which is a completely different wavelength as far as I'm concerned. I myself wouldn't be surprised if there were intelligences that are immaterial compared to us, so on a different level of things, because the universe is made up of all sorts of levels of energy, way more than we know and way more than we really understand. So, but I've never had any experience with them, with that, any of that. I do occasionally experience some type of communication with something outside of myself that isn't human or animal, that's invisible, occasionally. And at that moment, I'm like, given the choice to interact with that on a more permanent basis, but it's difficult. It's not something that I find really easy to do. Actually, yesterday I had a little tiny moment where something funny happened. We'd been to a garden center close by here, and we'd bought a couple of little presents, and some of those presents had little backpacks made out of fabric, cloth like that. Really pretty, really cute. And I was just sitting there waiting for husband to go bring the coffee in the little restroom, or no, coffee house, I should say, tea house that they've got in the garden center. And I was just sitting there looking at my, things I've got and looking at people passing by. and I was looking at those backpacks, and like this big, really cute, and thinking of the people that we're going to give them to, and then going like, yeah, well, it's an expression in Dutch. We've all got a little backpack, which means we've all got our, foibles, our manuals, things that we don't deal with very well, bad memories, things like that. The backpack is really a symbol for a couple of psychological quirks and weirdnesses and things like that, and sensitivities and things like that. And at that moment, I was sitting there and just sort of staring blankly ahead. And there's three ladies passing by in front of me at the end of the place where I was sitting, one after the other, and each of them, they were dressed slightly differently, but they had a similar type of sports coat on, and a similar type of sports backpack on them, on their backs. So one after the other came through my viewer like that, with their backpack. So I was laughing to myself like a silly old woman that I am, and sitting there, and I felt like, okay, so this is some kind of a communication. Somebody out there is communicating something to me and making me laugh, making me, enjoy the fact that, okay, so we all have this backpack of things that tend to bear us down slightly or more than slightly. And you just shouldn't take it all so very seriously. And at that moment, I felt like there was this presence next to me. And the only way I can describe that really is larger than myself, invisible. But still, what I could have kind of feel or sense a presence there on a completely different wavelength from everybody else around me. And she or it or he, none of that applies really, had a lot of color about them. So all sorts of, it might as well have been a really beautifully decorated alien person with really great big eyes, yes. And she was larger. She, let's just call her she for now, for the sake of having a pronoun, And she was sitting, there was no chair, right next to me. And she was like towering over me a bit, trying to just, there was just like a little spark. I'm making a whole meal out of describing this, but it was basically just a second. And I felt like, okay, I see you. And thank you for that, because that was fun. And there should be more fun. So I have no idea whether that was an angel, an alien, or a piece of my imagination. It didn't really feel like something I imagined. It didn't come out of myself. It was something outside me that I could just suddenly perceive all of a sudden. So I'm just telling you this. This is something that happened yesterday. It happens very occasionally. And I don't see more than one ever. I don't know what they are. They're friendly, to me at least. And that's it, basically. So that's I have no idea about the whole aliens business. It's not that I think there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. So not necessarily with spaceships and stuff like that, because that sounds too TV-ish and movie industry-ish to me. So I don't buy into that stuff as necessarily as much. And I love Star Trek. I love, all the... but it's not like it's real to me. Not that way. Enough of that. Question number 2 is, do you believe or have a connection with or have any interaction with past lives? Now that's a completely different kettle of fish, right? For more intel on that, I refer you back to my playlist about past lives revelations, and suffice it to say that I am here thanks to integrating a piece of self that I encountered during a soul retrieval regression session, actually on YouTube. So all of my life has been restructured and reorganized thanks to getting back a piece of self that was stuck in the what I always call the 14th century, even though I have no real notion whether it was that period or any other period necessarily. There's a whole series of connections through past lives that is completely vital. That is something I will, even though I have absolutely as little proof other than how I am now. That's the proof I've got, because this isn't how I used to be. Hence the, a little bit of a miserable introduction just now about, my work situation back then, because I wasn't able to engage and connect with people. And now I can, thanks to getting my past life energy back into this me here that you see. So lots more, but this is quite enough for that question, I think. Number 3 is about mermaids. And I'm going to group a couple of those together because it feels a bit to me like they're the same. In my life, it's the same type of approach, basically. And that will apply then, the same story will apply more or less to mermaids, to aliens. Bigfoot, I have no idea, because we don't really have that type of, but I kind of know what that could be like. If you had a different history for Europe, you might have some type of experience like that as well over here. And the other one being vampires on the list. I'm going to group those all together because they'll save us a bit of time. I tend to look at all of those more or less from a cultural historical point of view, I'm afraid. I don't really believe that there are people living in the sea, because there would be, as my husband said when I asked him about this, he said there would be more evidence. You would find them more often, like you find all sorts of animals. Nowadays, the world is too well known. And I think that the ghosts and Bigfoot and the vampires and the mermaids and even the aliens basically have to do, they're kind of reflections of, at some level, at some point, there will be reflections of the fear or that is actually a part of living a rather isolated life as a group of people. Of course, that happened over here in this country just as much, although the Netherlands really has a really large population density. I'm trying to go back a bit so you can see me because I'm having a rather hard time with all the sunlight, but okay, I'll just keep at it anyway because we're going. So yeah, fear of strangers, also fear of disease, fear of people. There were people, I read a story last week, actually, another really recent episode, about a guy who was, I think, about 70 or 75 years old or so, and he used to live in this village where I live now, and he disappeared completely, vanished without a trace. And there were a couple of people later on in the early 90s, I think, who really researched his background and what happened to him in those days and all that, and tried to find him again. And of course, everybody's supposing that he's had an accident and just vanished into a pond somewhere, and nobody's been able to find him again. So this guy was already, he wasn't like a completely normal, regular type of person. He was a bit of an outcast, or he wasn't really a tramp. He did live somewhere. He did have a house. But his lifestyle wasn't the same as everybody else's. And this being a little village, you actually get that type of a contrast between the way people live when they're really close together and everybody's related to everybody and they know each other and they've seen each other grow up as kids and all that. And there's like this really safe and or rigid type of a framework that they're all used to, and includes school and church and work and all of it, and they really have their lives are really organized by this structure. And anything that's different from that structure, like me, for example, I've never fitted in anywhere. Never. Not in the south of France, not in Amsterdam, and not over here. So all I can do nowadays is just be nice to people, and be harmless generally, and make it work together with husband, which is, happening. So I tend to look at all these phenomena more like social stories. They're social, and they're different voices depending on who you are, on how much imagination you have, how much of the past is in your system, basically, that you've had no help dealing with, which is where aliens, mermaids, and vampires, certainly, I think all three of those would, if you're investigating those, I would tend to look at that as, okay, what were they afraid of? Just to put it really simply. And those three would then, or especially the mermaids and the vampires, would be actually physical creatures. So you would have to have physical evidence, of course. I don't live in Romania. I don't know what it's like over there. I do love Romanian folk music all the time. No problem there. I don't see the connection really to all this blood-sucking business. There is a whole... the thing is also that it gets recycled culturally, because people like some excitement, and so they make movies about Dracula, which I watched, by the way, a couple of weeks ago, and there was so much Freudian psychological, rather predictable craziness going on. People need a place to put the crazy. This is me being a rationalist Dutch person, okay? People need a place where they can look at the crazy from the outside and be safe on the couch with, preferably with partner, and a box of chocolates, and look at the thing without, and it's not in your life, really. So, all that. About the ghosts, I'm not completely sure. Because of the same way to the ghosts applies the same thing that I started off with me point of about the aliens, is that there are a lot of invisible layers to what we can perceive. I'm pointing over here because that's third eye kind of a perception. So again, no Hollywood, not for me. I don't do the way it's presented in media, because I don't think that's got anything to do with any natural truth. It may sound very unromantic, and it probably is, but I don't believe in that type of thing at all. I believe there are layers of consciousness, and there are sometimes moments where you're actually accessing a particular vibration. One of the, I believe it was Lisa who mentioned that in the 3 Fat Readers video about this tag. She mentioned, or was it Danny? No, I think it was Danny who mentioned this, that there are actually a place or a location can absorb vibration from an event happening there. That I completely subscribe to. I know that that's true, right? But whether you're susceptible, whether you're sensitive to that vibration, depends on so many things. And not everybody is sensitive to the same thing, ever. So, I mean, I am really sensitive to anything that has to do with wartime trauma, okay? And my husband and I visited the north of France, the First World War battlefields region a few times, and I'm not the one seeing apparitions. My husband tends to sometimes see, out of the corner of his eye, he sees soldiers. I don't see them. So, and I'm just sort of trying to I can tell that I don't like to go there from a vibrational standpoint in order to connect with that area and see what, because it's going to be overwhelming. So for me, seeing ghosts is a choice. Okay? And I don't normally choose to because, duh, let's not, because things to do and tea to drink. Okay? To some extent, work can be done with healing work can be done if you want to, if that's the thing you want to do. But it's a lot of work, and there's every single soul will be coming knocking at your door for you to help them. So that's ghost. Okay, so I actually sort of bundled a group of those questions together. I hope that works for you. I'm not completely sure whether I've ever astral traveled. It gets a bit more personal now, in after all those characters and types and phenomena. I don't know what that is, really. I meditate a lot every day with all sorts of ways. I use all sorts of vibrational techniques and access, to make myself stronger or make myself more sensitive or open up areas of things in my life. And I don't know what astral travel is, other than like time travel, time journeying, basically, which is some type of a shamanic journey, which was what happened during my soul regression session. If that counts, then that's what I did. But it was very restricted, it was very precise, and it was aimed at getting a particular result, namely the soul retrieval, and that's how it worked. So it was very specific. Whereas, of course, astral travel means going out of your body to some type of a different reality, right? To access some type of a reality. I don't see it that way. So maybe I do it all the time. I don't know. I don't call it that. I don't really interact with guides, spirit guides, other than what I've just mentioned in my tale with the rucksacks, with the backpacks. I don't really interact with animal spirits, or other than occasionally having a guardian animal spirit passing by for a while to inspire me. I don't really do that much with that. And certainly I don't really go places. I think I can really easily, but I will go to a place like the First World War battlegrounds. You would then not visit or revisit your memory of the place that you visited. You would actually go there as it is now. That's possible. I know that's possible. It's vibrationally possible to do that, but there's a cost to yourself in your life as you are here. And I believe more in interacting with what's around you. That's what's necessary and important to me. Okay, enough about that. Sleep paralysis is the next question, whether you've ever experienced that. I don't think so. I don't think I've ever had sleep paralysis. I can have really weird sleep patterns sometimes where I wake up in the middle of the night and I get all sorts of what happens really is that I'm not rational at those times, so I can be really afraid without really there being a cause, or it's just it feels very much like there's some excess type of vibration or excess type of adrenaline inside me that gets to me. So I have had a similar type of experience a long time ago. My mother used to be still alive back then, and that wasn't necessarily sleep paralysis. It wasn't that I couldn't move or anything, but I had heart palpitations a few times. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times that happened in total over a couple of years, where I woke up and I couldn't really breathe and my heart was beating really fast. That was really nasty. And I had no clue what was going on. And I had to get out of bed at some point and sit up, basically, and it passed after a while. It was very unpleasant. Not something I'd want to revisit. Okay, next question is about whether you have experiences of the clairs, so clairvoyance and clairaudience and that type of thing. Some, very few, but clear memories I do have, yes. There's a lot about, like, it depends how you define things also, because a lot of clarity, like very strong empathy, I can pick up on somebody else's emotions, on things they've experienced, things they've seen, what happened to them. If I need to, or if I am invited to do that, I will be able to read that like a book. Is that a clair? I don't know. It may appear like a clairvoyance of some kind to some people who don't know what's happening. To me, it's as natural as breathing. And it ties in with the next question, whether you had any paranormal experiences. It just depends what you qualify as paranormal. A lot of what I do every day is paranormal to a lot of people. To me, it isn't. To me, it's as normal as breathing, like I said. It's also because I'm like in the middle between those worlds. So that's my normal position. For me, it's my normal life. And I just engage with whatever it is that's there. It's like picking up on the vibration of my garnets here. And that's completely normal and natural to me. And it would certainly qualify as what the hell is going on to, to people who have no contact with that. I will come back to this in a bit because there's one tiny paranormal experience that I do want to tell you about, which might be cool. The last question here on my list is where you were abducted or contacted by aliens, and the answer is negative. I have no clue of this. So as far as I can tell, maybe I am an alien and that's why all this happened. That's possible, but I have no clue. I have no way of knowing about that, other than the way I present myself, the consistency as is, in the way I present myself anyway. So coming back to the paranormal experience bit, because that's the last bit that I really want to include in this little tag here. I hope it's little. It's 3/4 of an hour. I managed to actually talk our way through some of this fairly quickly, I think. It's an age and a half ago, but I had one very clear moment where I picked up on something that wasn't in my immediate surroundings. I think I was 17 years old at that time, or maybe 16. I'd visited a friend, a teacher, at my school, at his home. I think I had lunch with them or whatever, which was something that happened on and off fairly regularly. I wasn't like a completely friend of the house, but I was for a while. He was my teacher, and a couple of his daughters were in my class as well. So I was around them quite a bit. They had a clock on their wall in the living room that rang the hour with this big Ben type of a ringing sound. And later that day, later in the evening, I was in my bedroom at home by myself with nobody around, no music, no radio, no none of it. This will have been in the 80s somewhere. I was for a while, just basically rummaging around in my brain over the experiences of the day. And I thought I remembered visiting them for a split second, or maybe, like 4 or 5 seconds, that length of time. My thoughts were with them. I then heard inside my head very clearly this ringing of their clock, this ringing sound. this Big Ben tone, followed immediately afterwards by the church bells sounding the hour in my village, outside my window, over, a couple of streets over. I was really struck and really surprised, and I've always remembered it, because this was the closest thing that I've always interpreted as a moment of telepathy. Very simple, really, because what I haven't said yet is that I actually spoke to this teacher friend of mine about the clock. So it would make a lot of sense for him to be in his living room at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever it was, 10 o'clock in the evening, see his clock strike, listen to his clock striking the hour, and be reminded of the fragment of conversation we had earlier that same day, and think of me. And because I was thinking of them at the same time, there was this connection. And so I had a moment of perceiving what he heard in my brain, because there was we were really good friends then at that time. So that qualifies, I think, as a really specific paranormal little episode, in the sense that it was really simple, basically. It's not something I can make happen, ever. If I sort of align myself with my husband's awareness, someone I've been around way longer and with way more intensity and with way more of a whole plethora and a whole scale of all sorts of experiences and emotions during the past 32 and a bit years, I can sort of align myself with him very easily, and I can pick up but I will pick up on his emotions quite easily. That's something that just tends to happen very normally nowadays. But I will not hear what somebody is saying to them, because I haven't got any direct experience of that happening at that moment. And it's always different. Everything's always different. There aren't any repeating sounds. It's not that easy. But it was an interesting experience to have, and I have told you about it now. So, in conclusion, I'm going to dig out the burning charcoal, because it's still over here. It has simmered down quite a bit, and I will put down a bit more, a few more of these. I've got a nice big lump here of the resin. I will put that on, like so, and it will melt through the ashes and spread more smoke quite soon. There it goes. Layers in life, right? Personal layers. A lot more in my life is about dealing with my personal stuff. So much more than interacting with. But I've had to work. I've had to work as a healer also, to help myself get out of. I sometimes feel like I pulled myself out of the swamp by my own hair, like that. So going like that. So here's the smoke. Here's a bit more smoke for you as well. I hope this makes some kind of a sense to some people, and maybe I won't even post it, because I will be bored watching it back, because some of it is really me being sensible, I suppose. So, thank you for watching anyway, and I'll be seeing you again soon. Okay, bye-bye. See you soon.